All right, so this is our renewed, updated series of remove environmental risks from the transaction. We had 40 plus videos that we did back in 2018 or so, and time has passed. Our industry is always evolving, and we decided that it was time to refurbish and update this series, and I hope that you will enjoy it. This is video number 00. Again, the subject is remove environmental risks from the transaction, and we mean by this the environmental real estate transaction, mostly the commercial transaction. This is the introductory video to the entire series. The series has more than 30 videos in it, and we will issue them one by one, and also as not to exhaust your, I would say, time tolerance and patience. So we know, and I know that most of you are very busy, so I try to cut it in pieces, and you can then enjoy them at your leisure. We have been doing this since 1988, specializing in the phase 1 and phase 2, environmental site assessments and contamination cleanup and abatement. Since 1988, it's quite a long time. The SBA, who is a major, let's say, partner or major actor in our industry, I call them the prime mover in our industry, because they back up many, if not most, of the commercial transactions. They have their standard operating procedure, SOP 50.10.6, and in it they have an entire chapter, which is by itself almost a book, called Chapter 6, other core requirement, and a major subchapter there is environmental policies and procedures. And then over there, they go into a detailed requirements as to a definition of who can do the phase 1 and the phase 2 environmental site assessments. So they will qualify by the SBA rules. And they say that all these process transaction screens, phase 1 and phase 2 ESA, which is environmental site assessments, must be done, and must is in a bolded, must be performed by an environmental professional. And the environmental professional is one as defined by the United States EPA. They have a whole chapter about who is environmental professional that is qualified to do certain duties. You can yourself explore it under, you go online, EPA, environmental professional, you will get the whole chapter as to who is environmental professional. In brief, this is another leaflet from the EPA talking about who is and who qualifies an environmental professional. They have to have certain certifications, they have to have certain educational requirements, experience requirement, and relevant experience. And again, the special chapter of the EPA regulations describe in detail all of these requirements. I'm glad to tell you that I am qualified as an environmental professional because I've been doing a lot of it since 1964, when I graduated in mechanical engineering with additional credit in nuclear and chemical engineering, worked for 20 years in the nuclear industry, in the chemical industry, here as a refinery. Graduated to be a general engineering contractor in California, a licensed contractor, with a license to remove hazardous substances. And this is since 1989. And even the state of California at a certain time recognized me as a registered environmental assessor level 2, which was the highest level of registry for environmental professionals with the state of California. And they said that as an REA2, I was qualified to do completed all the requirements for the most stringent level of environmental registrations provided by the state. The REA2 is a project manager who can conduct all assessments and investigations, plus issue cleanup opinions, evaluate risk from contamination, and manage the cleanup of contaminated sites. Yes, I'm proud to be an environmental professional. I'm proud to have been qualified by the state, but I'm showing this to you because there are other people like me and out there. And when you select your professional, just make sure that they are qualified. And I have quite a few colleagues in this industry. Here is a recent site where we remove the contaminated soil. It's contaminated with pesticides. And it's in Silver Lake, in the city of Los Angeles, California, Silver Lake District. And you see us here with the big excavators. And on the left side, you see this is a hammer, pneumatic hammer, breaking all this concrete. And we had to break it. This concrete was immersed, saturated, impregnated with pesticides. And we had several hundred tons of it that we had to take to a landfill. And by the requirement of the landfill, we have to break it. And you see us spraying water because we are surrounded by residences, you see them in the background. And any dust that rises out of our operation must be controlled by the rules of the Air Quality Management District. And we have, what you don't see here, we have monitors all around the site, monitor every speck of dust that is going out from this site to the surrounding, because we have families and children and babies around here. And this dust is not only dust by itself, but also has chlorine, has pesticides in it. Pesticides don't only kill pests, they also kill people. So quite sensitive project and required a lot of professionalism in to do it. So here we are breaking the concrete in pieces, sending it to the landfill, and then you see the dirt under it. There was over 1,000 cubic yards of contaminated dirt. Again, we had to excavate under those stringent rules to make sure there is no dust flying around, no flying dust, and taking it to the landfill, putting on the trucks, making sure there is no, when you dump it on the trucks, there is no dust. It was quite an operation. I'm glad to tell you that now there is a 16-unit apartment building built on this site. So here is an example of one of the cases that we will talk more about it later on, but to give you a preliminary taste of what we are talking about. There is this strip plaza here, which belongs to our client, and he has had to refinance several $1 million of a loan, and the bank refused to refinance because there was somehow there was a knowledge of contamination under the property. Groundwater that was contaminated, and the bank says we are not financing it. And the contamination came here from across the street. Here is a dry cleaner. Whatever they discharged, they dumped, they spilled some cleanup solvents, cleaning solvents, dry cleaning solvents into the ground, into the floors. It penetrated the floors. It went down about 30 or 40 feet down to groundwater, and then groundwater flow is in this direction, as you see the yellow arrow, and it migrated from this corner property on the right into our client on the left. And by the time we were done excavating here, because the government was also involved, and whenever the government is involved, it's getting quite expensive. And by the time we've done exploring it and investigating, it was over $200,000 in investigation. It was quite extensive and expensive. And but we managed to prove that there was no quote unquote evil done on the part of our client. Yes, groundwater was contaminated on the release side, but it came from the other guys, and we got him a clean bill of health, and he managed to refinance. So this is one example of what we are dealing with. Here is a cross section of what happened there. The dry cleaners are here on the right side here. This is the street level, and you see these clouds, brownish, purplish clouds going down. This is the soil and this is a dry cleaner on the right side, and it's going down and hitting the blue strip, which is groundwater, and migrating with groundwater here to the left, all the way under our client. Our client also had a historical dry cleaner on the property, but it was a minimal use. You see there is a little bit of a plume here, a little bit of contamination. But with our investigation, we managed to show that this contamination did not merge into the bigger plume that came from the other side and did not contaminate the groundwater. So as I said, it was kind of expensive, but we made him clean. Here is another case that we will talk more about cases like this later on in the series. And our client owns this apartment building here, and he, like the other one, he had to refinance, and they retained a consultant to do a phase one. The consultant did the phase one, and we'll speak more about what phase one is in detail later on. But in a very few words, the phase one basically tells you if you need to be concerned about. You do a quick research, historical records, you inspect the property, you inspect all kinds of government records, and you say whether or not there is a concern for possible, maybe, contamination under the property. And the consultant that did the phase one said, well, look, there is a dry cleaners up here. And you see my laser pointer. There is a dry cleaner here, and we are concerned that they might have contaminated, caused contamination to migrate under this apartment building. So the bank said phase two. In the phase two, basically, we explore to see if the concerns of the phase one are real. And what we did, we went here around the building, we poked hole in the ground, we sucked out vapor, soil vapor from the ground. We tested it, and we found out that indeed there was kind of a subterranean cloud of contamination that migrated from the dry cleaner. And we show it here, make a rendition of it, kind of a visual, conceptual picture of it, and show like this cloud coming under the building, apartment building. And yes, the cloud contaminated the soil vapor under the building. The good news was that the amount of the contamination was such that it was not a concern. It was there, but it was in a minimal amount. And we issued a report accordingly, and our client got the loan from the bank, and they were very happy. Here is another case. Again, our client was interested in this building here, in the middle, where you see my laser pointer. And they knew that the soil vapor around was contaminated. We had all the reports to know that the facility down here below contaminated in a big way, big time, the area. They contaminated soil, they contaminated groundwater. Groundwater here is pretty deep. This is close to LAX airport. And but they created this cloud that spread around. But our client wanted the property. So we did all the investigation, he purchased it, and we will talk about it later. We did what needed to be done to protect the inhabitants of the building from toxic vapor. There are certain ways that you can do it. He purchased the building, he's there, he's doing business, and I think they are quite satisfied. So this is just to tell you that contamination is not the end of the day. Good, profitable transactions can be done with contaminated properties. I personally know some sophisticated buyers out there. Some of them even are retired consultants, if you wish, and they understand contamination, and they are not afraid, and they buy contaminated properties. Of course, they demand certain discounts, but everything is negotiable. Old late Leah Iacocca wrote a book, Talking Straight, which I read the book back in the 1980s. I think it was 1988 when I read the book, and he was still around, and he was quite a guy. And he said we are continually faced by great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as insoluble problems. And that applies in a great way to many of the real estate transactions that look scary at first, but they are brilliantly disguised as an insoluble problem, but they are great opportunities. General George Patton said, take calculated risks that is quite different from being rash. So we are not encouraging you to be rash, but we are telling you that risks can be calculated. Thank you very much for listening. Again, my name is Ami Adini. Call or text me anytime at 323-899-5001. I'm available to you for all questions. Email me at amia@amiadini.com. Visit our website at amiadini.com. Thank you very much for being such a good listener.